If you want to learn more about the Build Back Better legislation currently being discussed in Congress, stay tuned and listen to United States Senator Debbie Stabenow. We are so honored to have with us today our own United States Senator Debbie Stabenow, who is a champion for all things dealing with older adults and all things dealing with the people of Michigan. So, welcome, Senator. We appreciate you taking the time to be here. We know this is a challenging, very challenging time for you. Today is December 17th, and I'm not certain when this program will air, but things are changing rapidly. In Congress. So tell us a little bit. We're going to talk about the Build Back Better legislation, prescription drugs, and what this legislation, the back and forth, what it means for older adults.
Well, Paula, first of all, thank you to you and to AARP for being such a wonderful partner and a wonderful voice. When we talk about prescription drugs, you and I have been focused on the cost of prescription drugs for a long time. And I know everybody listening is juggling that, way too many paying way too much. And I want to thank AARP as we're pushing to get this bill done that we call Build Back Better. AARP has really been at the front of the line, helping us push and get the momentum to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. It seems like a no-brainer, but the truth is that we have drug companies who we appreciate the innovation and research and vaccination development, but frankly, you and I as taxpayers help pay for that. We pay a lot for that research, which I strongly support. But the reality is that we pay more than any other place in the world for our medicine, prices going up rather than down. And it makes no sense. And in the bottom analysis, it's just because they can, because there's not negotiation for under Medicare to bring down prices, or there's not the accountability that's needed. So that's what we're working on. That's what this is really all about. And let me start with insulin. If you're a diabetic, or you're one of your children or your grandchildren, you know that you're paying hundreds of dollars a month for insulin and things related to that. Our bill will cap that cost at $35 a month. Now, insulin's an example for me of just how out of control prices are in the United States. It was actually developed 100 years ago. 100 years ago this week by two Canadian doctors who took almost no money for it. They basically turned it over to the hospitals, saying this will save lives. We don't think it's morally right for us to make money off of this. Can you imagine? And so what we have seen is just in the last 30 years, we've seen prices, triple for insulin and go higher, 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 higher. So it makes no sense. They've certainly recovered their costs for any of the research and development that anybody's done. So $35 a month. Secondly, we are going to begin Medicare negotiating prescription drug prices. We pay the highest prices in the world because we're the only major country in the world that doesn't negotiate to get the best price, which is silly. The VA does it. The VA pays about 40% less for veterans. And it's ridiculous that that doesn't happen here. And the only reason it doesn't happen here is that when we were passing Medicare Part D, there were so many drug company lobbyists pushing back to stop negotiation that unfortunately they were successful. Now, I have always wanted negotiation, and think it's wrong that frankly today there are over 1,600 people paid to be here in Washington to try to stop us from doing what we're trying to do. But we're going to get it done anyway. And so we're going to begin to negotiate with the top drugs. For instance, Humira, which is it's a top-selling drug for us in the United States, I think, or in the world, for arthritis and other kinds of diseases. It has gone up something like 470% since it was developed in 2003. It's just through the roof. And it makes no sense again. It absolutely makes no sense. You can pay over $70,000 a year for this medication. And so We want to cap that. We're going to cap the out-of-pocket costs for seniors to $2,000 a year. Once you hit the cap, once you hit the donut hole, rather than 6 or 7 or 8,000, we're going to cap that at 2,000, and we're going to stop inflationary increases so they can't price gouge. So really important. And I will say, in addition to that, we're laser focused on other healthcare costs, cutting the cost of home care, making sure that we're doing more with high-speed internet so we can do more home care through telemedicine, and making sure we're doing more to help folks who need food assistance. That's something that I've been leading as well, and other areas that that are so important.
This is such good news for so many people. I know you have been on the front lines fighting this battle for decades, and this is the time, right? There's no other time that's better than the time that we're in right now. So, a
Right.
couple of questions on that. What's the time frame, and what can the people listening, what can they do to help? Because we've got to get this across the finish line. There's so much riding on this legislation. If it doesn't happen now, we're all very, very concerned. So, what can we do to help, and what's the time frame?
Well, the great news that President Biden is all in and leading this effort, strongly supporting this effort. And what I've talked about, the lowering cost of prescription drugs and lowering the cost of healthcare and the other things, have actually passed the U.S. House of Representatives. So final step is the U.S. Senate. Now, the good news is here in Michigan that both of you U.S. senators, myself as the senior senator and Senator Gary Peters, are strongly supportive. I've been involved in writing many provisions in this bill. And so we need to be reaching out to other senators and getting families and friends in other states where they can reach out to their senators as well. We have to get enough votes to be able to get this done. We have all 50 Democrats together at this point in time on these particular provisions, but we need to get more votes and overall for the overall bill. So also supporting AARP's efforts, really the leading voice on bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. I appreciate so much all of what you have been doing. So reaching out family and friends, use your Facebook page, tell your story, share your story with me, and allow me to share your story on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Nothing's more important than making this personal. And so if you can help me do that by going to my website and my Facebook page, sharing your story and saying it's okay for me to share it on the floor of the Senate, that is extremely helpful as well. So it's push, advocate, ask your friends to do the same. The time is now.
I very much appreciate that. And for those of you who are listening, please just don't listen and do nothing. Let's listen and get active, get involved, and share your stories. Talk to your friends in other states. Make certain that the senators are hearing our voices, our collective voices. We know that makes a difference. We know it makes a difference. And I'm with you, Senator Stabenow. We've heard so many stories that break your heart about a woman selling her wedding ring in order to pay for her prescription drugs from her deceased husband, or someone not paying their rent or their groceries, getting the groceries they need, or cutting their prescriptions in half. That has to stop in the United States of America. And now's the time to do that. So we absolutely appreciate your championing this cause for us. But why are prices so much cheaper in Canada? Why, you can go to Canada and get
Sure. Well, and actually, when I was in the U.S. House of Representatives, I was the first member of Congress that invited seniors to get on a bus with me and to drive from the Detroit side of the Ambassador Bridge to the Windsor side of the
We have photos of that.
Yes, we called it Stabenow's RX Express, and we met with a physician there who was able to give a script so that folks could go in. And I'll never forget a breast cancer patient who was able to get her tamoxifen for like 40% less by getting on a bus and going 10 minutes across the bridge. Unbelievable. And it's actually very simple. Under their healthcare system, they negotiate the best price for their people, period. That's just what they do. And Canada's a wonderful example of that. And by the way, oftentimes these are American-made drugs. They're not unsafe. What we hear from the drug companies is, oh, our medicines are safer than their medicines. But I remember asking the CEO of Lipitor, there's Lipitor Canada as a company, there's Lipitor America. It's all part of the same
Right.
company. And I said, are you telling me that Lipitor Canada is not providing safe medicine? Well, of course, they wouldn't answer that because, of course, that's ridiculous, right?
Mhm.
And so
Right.
that the arguments they make about safety make no sense. I mean, anything that we would do, if we open that bridge, if we open the corridors for you to be able to get your prescriptions from Canada, which I strongly support, of course they have to meet our own FDA safety rules. That's not what this is about. We basically have companies now that spend more on marketing than research. 9 out of 10 companies in the United States spend more money every year on those great ads we see every minute on TV than they do on research. The research is mostly done in some way with taxpayer dollars, either through direct funding or write-offs on their taxes. And so we as Americans have a huge stake in developing these medicines. And I'm proud of it. I mean, I'm proud that the vaccine for COVID was developed in Michigan at Kalamazoo with Pfizer. I think that's wonderful. But you and I, as taxpayers, had a hand in that.
Right.
And so
Right.
we just need to know that if we're going to help pay for something, we ought to be able to afford it when everything's done and not pay the highest prices in the world. So that's all this is about. That's all it's about, is just making sure folks can afford a very important part of healthcare, literally keeping folks alive. And it's shameful if somebody's got to decide, do I eat? Do I keep the heat on this winter? Or do I get the life-saving medicine that I need? That is not a choice you should have to make. And our Build Back Better effort is to make sure you don't have to make that choice.
And again, people getting involved. Again, our senators, we're fortunate to have our senators on board with all of this, but please get involved, get engaged, call, send your stories in, and we will share them. Uh, Senator Stabenow, when we talk about Build Back Better, there is a lot in there, a lot to unpack, right? But
There
also
is.
there's information there about telemedicine, telehealth, and hearing aids. So can you talk
Yes.
a little bit about that? Because all that impacts our population as well.
Absolutely. Well, the goal of Build Back Better is to lower costs for folks, lower costs for seniors, lower costs for families, and then really invest in the future for our children, in our grandchildren. And so we want to lower the cost of prescription drugs. We want to have Medicare cover hearing aids and other things related to hearing. In fact, for me, the next step after this is we need to cover dental and vision as well. But this bill covers hearing, which is an important first step, as well as lowering the cost of home care and child care. I mean, we know that a lot of women are not able to go back to work, women or men, or can't find quality child care, and it costs too much. I know for my daughter and my grandkids, they pay more in child care for their 3 children than they pay in their mortgage. So that doesn't make any sense. So we're looking at a number of costs, the utility costs, prescription drugs, home care, childcare, bring down those costs, and then invest in the future. The new future is all about the internet. It's not just getting on the internet and on Facebook and the other social media. It is about medicine, and we know under COVID that a lot of folks are being treated over the internet, talking to their doctor over the internet, and so this is a big piece. And in fact, the good news is we've already passed legislation in the infrastructure bill that's going to fund all across Michigan what we need to be able to connect to the internet, which is terrific. And then we also want to bring jobs home to America. What COVID showed us is that trying to get auto parts from around the world doesn't work when the global economy shut down in a pandemic. And so we want to bring all those clean energy manufacturing jobs home. I want to bring them to Michigan. I want people in those new great vehicles, electric vehicles and so on, but I want all those parts made in Michigan.
Absolutely. And everything that you're talking about, sometimes, we hear that people don't quite understand what the Build Back Better legislation the bill would do for them, how it impacts them directly. And so this is really helpful because you're talking hearing aids, your home and community-based services, prescription drugs, telehealth, telemedicine, child care, autonomous vehicles. That's how it impacts you, my dear audience friends. That's how it
Right.
impacts us. And that's why it's so important. So having said all that, there's a growing, what I want to say, sentiment against anything political. Everything's become so political anymore. People, the voting for 2022, major elections coming up.
Right.
What's the civil? What's happening? You see it? Do you see Congress ever coming together to a place where they, how they used to function, where they could talk with each other, negotiate things? I mean, there's such a divisiveness now. It appears, and that's really discouraging to a lot of people.
It's discouraging to me, Paula. And there's been so much distrust instilled by people who benefit from that. They don't want us to trust our doctors. They don't want us to trust elected officials or anybody. And they just want to create chaos. And of course, the scariest thing is that the people who really benefit from chaos are folks like in Russia and China and other places who, don't want our democracy to work. So we've got to we've got to trust each other, and we can have disagreements. We can have disagreements all day long. But in the end, we have to be able to trust that we're going to come together and that we're going to support a voting system that works. I am so proud of the fact that, first of all, a year ago in Michigan, we had the highest voter turnout ever in the history of Michigan, ever. And so some folks, don't like who we voted for. And so rather than trying to convince us to vote for their person, they want to take away our freedom to vote. Well, that's not the way to do it. We need to keep strong voting systems and including absentee ballots, which are so critical. I mean, frankly, the changes being talked about in the Michigan legislature would require folks to go back. Instead of automatically getting your absentee ballot like you always do, you'd have to go back and show some kind of ID. If you don't have a driver's license anymore, show some other kind of ID, go into the clerk's office, all kinds of complicated things. When we had in Michigan the fairest, most open, transparent election we've ever had, and both Republicans and Democrats have said that. So, Senate committees run by Republicans, the Secretary of State, a Democrat, local clerks, everybody has said that it was the fairest, best run election we've had. So we can disagree about who should be leaders or what policies are, but we've got to find a way to come together and trust information and be able to and to care about each other in the end.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I really respect so much about AARP, nonpartisan, nonprofit, but we're a trusted resource for people. And so we will be sharing with information about what some of this legislation will do, the voting legislation will do, if people sign the petition, what that means, and if they don't sign it, and what happens, because it's important that people understand and have the facts, have real facts that they can believe in and trust, right? That's not
Absolutely.
politicized one way or the other. We've got about 30 seconds left. What would you like to say to this audience in Grand Rapids and Lansing and Jackson who's listening to this show? What would you like to share with them as we close out?
Well, I know it's been a very tough year, in fact, more than a tough year right now. I hope you're safe. I hope you're vaccinated. I hope your family is, so that you're protected from this pandemic and we can move through it. And I'm as sick of wearing masks as anybody else. And the way we solve that is killing the virus. And that means they have to have nowhere to go. And if we're all vaccinated, they don't have anywhere to go in terms of a host. And so I'm hopeful that this next year, and I'm confident this next year will be a healthier year. I think we've got some tough times right now to go through in the winter, but it's going to be a healthier year. Things are going to keep getting better.
Well, we appreciate you so much, you and Senator Peters. We are so proud of the work that you're doing on behalf of older adults in Michigan. So Thank you, and we will have our continue to lift our voices, have our voices heard on these pieces of legislation that are so important to our 1.3 million members here in Michigan and their families and their communities. So, thank you for all that you do, and I hope that you don't go tired and well doing, as they used to. My mom used to say, "Don't go tired and well doing. Just keep doing good work and stay strong." We appreciate you.
Thank you.
If you are a female over the age of 65 or a male over the age of 70, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, hyperparathyroidism, or hyperthyroidism, or if you take oral steroids, inhaled steroids, acid reflux medications, or anti-seizure medications, you might be at risk for low bone density or thin bones, a condition called osteoporosis. In order to find out your risk, you should get a bone density scan. What is a bone density scan? It's a low-dose X-ray that is used to tell us how thick or thin your bones are. This is radiation, and it sounds risky. However, to put in perspective, every day you are exposed to natural radiation, whether that comes from soil, plants, or even the food that you eat. A bone density scan equates to 1 day worth of radiation. X-rays can range anywhere from 3 to 5 days or 10 days of radiation. CT scans can go anywhere from 2 to 5 years worth of natural radiation. So a bone density scan is worth only about 1 day. So it's very safe, it's low risk, and for the information that it tells us, it's actually very worthwhile. In the event that you get the bone density scan and it comes back showing low bone density or osteopenia or osteoporosis even, there are management plans that you can discuss with your physician. First things first is prevention. You should take a vitamin D supplement. Exercises will be recommended. Weight bearing, such as walking. Muscle strengthening exercises will also be recommended, including using elastic bands for low impact exercise. Exercises that improve your coordination and your balance to help you prevent falls will also be recommended, including yoga, Tai Chi, and Pilates. If your bone density is very low and you're in the osteoporotic range and you're said to have osteoporosis, medications will be recommended, and they come in a very big variety, whether they're oral, injections, or infusions. And some of them can be administered anywhere from a daily, monthly, or even yearly. It depends on your medical conditions. It depends on your preferences. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Make sure you talk to your doctor about your risks for low bone mass and whether you need a bone density scan or not.
Hello, my name is Craig Stiles. I'm a financial advisor with Ameriprise Financial. I get many questions in regards to what type of products do we utilize within our portfolios that we offer and recommend to our clients. I address this question because in many circumstances, there's a lot of bias that's out there. A lot of clients get marketed to on a daily basis as to what type of product is going to be best to them. We hear about investing into commodities during inflationary periods. We hear about buying large cap growth products, large cap value products. It's a growth environment right now. It's a value environment. But in every circumstance, a lot of people always ask, well, how do you get compensated? What is it you specifically do? Am I biased towards any particular product that I might recommend? In many circumstances, financial advisors, especially if you're going out and interviewing one that you wish to work with, I would kind of address a lot of those questions and understand, well, what type of products do you normally recommend and why? And don't be afraid to ask that why question, because you want to make sure that you're getting to basically understand, are they investing or are they supported by a particular investment product or a particular firm? Are there firm models that are being recommended to you? So in that aspect, I try to remove the bias of all the data. I look for specific things that are addressing specific needs and market conditions currently, as well as what the client's needs are, whether it's a growth in income over time, whether it's the growth and value of strategies. Now, I don't expect you to understand a lot of those types of investment structures, but I do encourage you to sit down and meet with a financial advisor and try to understand what that bias could be. and how many products that they particular offer. So typically an organization that has a very wide variety of products that they can offer to you is going to be better for you to work with, just from the aspect of, you know, that they're going to be working in your best interest and will be working as a fiduciary, because the more products that they have, the more that they're going to have to sift through to make sure they're finding the right one for you.
Amy, welcome back to Real Possibilities. Thank you for being here with us today. You know, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about finances when it comes to long-term care, when it comes to insurance, who will pay, who won't pay, and how people prepare, you know, ahead of time if they even think that they're going to need long-term care. No one ever believes that. But what do people need to know about their own personal finances when it comes to long-term care and what insurances will and won't do?
Well, a lot of people don't realize how expensive an assisted living facility can be. A lot of people will also have the misconception that, you know, their insurance is going to cover it. And that's not always the case. So you need to take a look at your finances ahead of time. If you are planning ahead, you want to make sure that you look into a long-term care policy if that is available to you. Mainly because if in the event you do need to go into someplace like an assisted living or a skilled nursing facility or something long-term like that, that's going to help cover a lot of your costs. So people are living longer and longer and longer, and you want to make sure that wherever you have to go later in life, it's going to be someplace you like. We want to make sure that you can do that.
Absolutely.
So like I said, long-term care policies are fantastic, or making sure that you set up a trust. And so that there is a pot of money that you can pull from in order to cover your care.
And the earlier you set that up, the less expensive it is, correct?
Yes, yes. In fact, you know, usually around 50 is when I usually tell people to start looking into a long-term care policy, or setting up that trust for later on, because it is a lot cheaper when you start younger. And I think you kind of get cut off at about 70. So that's kind of your check.
And a lot of people, you know, they prefer to age in place or age at home, but a lot of folks don't want their families taking care of them either. So that gives you some options, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Amy. Hopefully that's information that you can use. Thanks for being with us, Amy. There's so much happening all around us. Hopefully today you receive some news that you can use on Real Possibilities.